We all wish that we could have taken that pain away. We wish that the depths of struggle with mental illness could have a quick fix. And I thought as well about the middle schoolers and high schoolers who have been in the news the last few months because they have taken their life. And with those stories across the country, there's been a common theme. Children coming to terms with being gay and facing dehumanizing bullying and not being able to trust that life could be any different than the pain that they're experiencing in the present moment. And I thought as well about the countless soldiers who have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, unable to adjust to civilian life where they weren't under constant threat, unable to turn off the vigilance, feeling that any crowd of people, no matter how small, was dangerous, and often self-medicating with drugs and alcohol and just taking their lives to get out. Well, there are a couple things to say here. First, I will never intentionally diminish the overwhelming power of brokenness that we can experience as human beings. The combination of painful circumstances and the mysteries of mental illness can completely change who we are and lead us to actions that we never would have considered otherwise. In my view, denying this dishonors those who have died so tragically. We can be honest and at the same time do everything we can to treat mental illness and intervene on behalf of those that we love to save life. And second, here's where I'll preach, I guess. As people of faith, we must do our best to internalize our story for today, which is similar to our great story, the story of waiting for blessing, waiting for promise, the story of crucifixion and waiting for resurrection. The good news we proclaim is that God can change things. God does not create the messes we find ourselves in, but God can bring good from the messes, each and every one of them. And this is where I find the words of McFague helpful. That God is not just some being out there, some magical being out there, but God is in the midst of reality. God is not some possibility within reality, but reality itself. What we're proclaiming is, we know brokenness is strong, it does damage, we know that all too well. But we believe that there's another power that's stronger than brokenness. We believe that God is stronger than brokenness. We're saying that we know that life can be painful, but we testify to the fact that this pain is not all that life is. There is always goodness, and usually we can see it clearly. It's all around us, and we know that it's what's most powerful. But even when we can't see it, and there are times when this happens, we say we trust that goodness is still there. Nothing could be powerful enough to take goodness away completely. We testify to the fact that pain is not all that there is. There is always love. And usually we can feel it. Usually we can feel it coming through those who surround us. Usually we know that it's what's most powerful. But even when we can't feel God's power of love, and that happens, we trust that love is still there. Nothing could be powerful enough to take God's power of love completely away. There are times when we wait for promise, for what seems like 25 years, for God to do good, for what seems like forever. And our ancestors say to us, keep waiting. Sometimes God takes a long, long time. We know, we've been there too. But we can see this promise moving towards fulfillment, looking at your story from the outside. Even if you can't see it, keep waiting. There are times when the shadow of crucifixion and the cross are so overpowering that we can't imagine resurrection breaking through it all. But our ancestors of faith say, keep waiting. It takes 3 long days sometimes. But love will win. Sin and death and destruction can't outlast God. Resurrection will break through. Hang on to this hope. We proclaim that this is ultimately how the world is. The world is good. And when that's not our experience, have hope. Wait. Trust. God is too powerful for life to be like that forever. When I was in seminary, I was trained in a particular method of counseling called narrative therapy. I can't say I'm particularly good at it or ever was, but I found the method helpful. We talked about it as a hope-based method, and we said it assumed God's presence. It assumed the presence of life-changing goodness. So in this method, as a counselor, when someone is telling you their story, oftentimes you focus in on the problem and try to separate out the problem, and you take it out and you slice it and dice it and you analyze it. You try to understand the problem as much as possible so that you can get a handle on it and then start to address it, to fix it. Well, this method takes a different approach. It starts looking around the problem for exceptions to it. Tries to look around the problem for the presence of goodness. Where are those places where good things are happening in this person's life? I'm assuming that it's not all problem. It's not all brokenness. There's goodness somewhere. And as you listen to the story, you listen for it. And when you hear it, then you focus in on that. And you ask questions about it. And you build a narrative or a story around it. You try to make that goodness, the story of that goodness, bigger and bigger and bigger, so that it starts to move the problem out of the way, or make it a little bit smaller, make it a little bit more manageable, and some hope starts to break through. As people of faith, we assume that God's goodness and love, God's presence, is the heart of reality. It's the center. And by focusing on that reality, God's goodness and love, God's power to bring change becomes more visible. It's as if God gets bigger for us. And when that happens, hope is easier to find when brokenness does its damage. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but we are more able to find something to hold on to as the storm swirls around us. And we know deep within us, and we remind each other, that blessing is coming. Resurrection is coming. God's goodness can't be held off forever. This is a message we support and we make bigger as we give to the church. It's a message we desperately need. May we trust and believe. Amen.